She sat before her mirror, staring at a woman in silk who looked nothing like her anymore. Her reflection had wealth, grace, and diamonds that could blind envy itself. Yet her eyes held something darker, something she couldn't name. Sometimes she wandered through the empty halls, listening to her own footsteps echo like reminders. Servants smiled politely. Friends envied her life. But none of them saw how the mansion had become her cage. The night Elena Moetti betrayed her husband, London slept peacefully, unaware that behind the tall glass walls of the Moetti mansion, a woman's soul was quietly shattering. Rain traced thin silver lines down the enormous windows, and the wind pressed against the house as if it wanted to be let in. In her dressing room, Elena sat before a mirror surrounded by warm bulbs, their light soft against her porcelain skin. The woman who stared back at her was beautiful, powerful, envied, but her eyes looked like someone else's. They held exhaustion, the kind that came from smiling through years of quiet abandonment. She adjusted the diamond earring on her left ear, the one Adrian had given her for their 5th anniversary, and tried to remember the last time she had felt something other than numbness. Somewhere between his business trips and late-night calls, her heart had stopped feeling like haze. The mansion was too large, the nights too long, and the silence too deep. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. A name glowed on the screen, Ethan Carter. Adrian, her husband, was across the ocean in New York, closing another deal that would make his empire's name echo through the financial pages. He had texted earlier, "Don't wait up." It was a familiar message, one she could almost predict before it arrived. Yet tonight, those 3 words felt heavier. As she sat there, still in her silk robe, her heart fluttered with both fear and anticipation. Outside, thunder rolled softly, and the city lights flickered in the rain-blurred distance. She stood, slipped into her black dress, and took one last look at her reflection. "You're about to destroy everything," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. But her feet didn't listen. They carried her to the door, toward a night she would never forget, a night that would change every definition she had of love, loyalty, and herself. 2 months earlier, at the Moetti Foundation Charity Gala, the story of her undoing had begun. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and chatter. Laughter bounced between marble pillars while cameras flashed from every angle. Elena stood beside Adrian, wearing a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. He was charming and handsome in his tuxedo, his arm around her waist like a possession rather than affection. As he spoke with investors, she drifted away toward the quieter edge of the room and collided with Ethan Carter. The photographer stared at her instantly, his hands warm, his voice gentle. "Careful, Mrs. Moetti," he said with a grin that reached his eyes. She laughed nervously, apologizing as champagne dripped onto his camera lens. "You just ruined a perfect shot," he teased lightly. "But I think it was worth it." Something in his tone disarmed her, not flirtatious, just kind. Later that night, when she passed him again, he nodded politely, and she realized he hadn't asked for her number, hadn't even lingered. That simple respect, in a world where everyone wanted something from her, made her curious. A few days later, she received an envelope at her foundation office, a small photograph of her from that night. She was looking away from the crowd, a trace of sadness on her face. At the back, he had written, "Sometimes beauty hides its ache. E.C." Elena should have ignored it, but she didn't. She framed it in her studio. It was the first time she'd seen herself honestly in years, not as Adrian's wife, not as a socialite, but as a woman aching to feel alive again. The Moetti mansion stood at the edge of the Thames, its glass walls reflecting a perfect view of London's skyline. To outsiders, it looked like paradise. Inside, it echoed with emptiness. Each room smelled faintly of roses, and every surface gleamed, but beneath the beauty lay a hollow quiet. Servants walked softly, careful not to disturb the loneliness that lived there. Elena moved through the house like a ghost, her heels tapping rhythmically against marble floors. The walls were decorated with Adrian's achievements, awards, newspaper covers, portraits that showed the face of success. He had given her everything money could buy, except time. Their love had turned into a contract, smooth, cold, reliable. He believed comfort was proof of affection. She craved touch, words, and eyes that saw her. Sometimes she'd pour a glass of wine and stand on the balcony, watching the city lights. She'd imagine Adrian beside her, talking about nothing, laughing at something ordinary. But when the night breeze hit her face, she realized she was always alone. The only sound was a river and her own heartbeat whispering reminders of what was missing. That evening, he called her from New York. "Everything okay, Lena?" His voice was kind but distant. She forced a smile into her tone. "Yes, I'm fine. Just tired." He didn't hear the way her voice broke at the end. When the call ended, the silence returned, heavier than before. She turned off the light and whispered to the dark, "Am I still his wife, or just part of his empire?" A month later, rain washed through London again. Elena was walking near Covent Garden, her umbrella trembling against the wind, when she noticed a familiar face through a cafe window. Ethan, hunched over his laptop, editing photos. His hair was messy, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and there was a softness in his focus that drew her in. He looked up, surprised but delighted. "Mrs. Moetti," he said, standing quickly. "Elena, please," she corrected, laughing as she shook off the rain. The cafe smelled of coffee and cinnamon, and for a while they spoke about everything except their worlds, art, music, places they'd never been. Ethan told her about growing up with nothing but an old camera and dreams that kept him alive. She told him about her mother, who used to paint sunsets and believed love was a masterpiece, not a contract. Hours slipped away unnoticed. When she finally stood to leave, he walked her to her car, their conversation still flowing like an unfinished song. As she opened the door, a gust of wind pushed her closer to him, their faces inches apart. For a brief, dangerous heartbeat, she wondered what it would be like if this were her real life. No titles, no cameras, no guilt. That night, she lay in bed beside the empty space Adrian used to fill. She replayed Ethan's laughter, the gentleness in his eyes. For the first time in years, sleep came easily, not because she felt secure, but because she felt seen. It was raining again when she visited Ethan's studio weeks later. The place was small, cluttered, and smelled of coffee and chemicals. He was developing new portraits, the walls lined with faces, strangers caught mid-emotion. "You photograph pain beautifully," she murmured. Ethan smiled sadly. "Maybe because I know what it looks like." He showed her a picture she didn't know existed, a shot from the gala. She was standing alone, half smiling, looking away from the crowd. "You looked lost," he said softly. "I wanted to remember it." For a moment, neither of them breathed. The air felt charged with something raw and dangerous. She stepped closer, meaning to thank him, but the words dissolved when their eyes met. The loneliness in hers mirrored the longing in his. Without warning, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was so gentle it made her tremble. Then it happened, a kiss that began as a question and ended as an answer neither of them wanted to face. When she pulled away, tears blurred her vision. "This can't happen," she whispered, backing away. "I'm married." Ethan's voice was low. "I know, but it already did." That night, Elena drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The city lights blurred through her tears. She had crossed a line she could never uncross, and for the first time, she felt both alive and dead at once. Every morning became a careful act of performance. Elena would wake before dawn, touch up her face, and spray her favorite perfume, amber and rosewood, the one Adrian loved. But lately, it no longer felt like haze. The scent clung to her skin like a reminder of the life she was borrowing, not living. When Ethan texted her small things like "thinking of you," she'd smile with tears in her eyes, hating herself for the way her heart skipped. Love was supposed to be pure, but hers was a garden of guilt. When Adrian returned from a business trip, he noticed her perfume lingered differently, stronger, almost desperate. He studied her face across the dinner table, searching for something he couldn't name. She smiled, spoke softly, and poured him wine, pretending nothing had changed. But he could feel it. Something invisible had slipped between them, like frost on glass. That night, when he touched her, she froze. Her body was there, but her heart wasn't. He kissed her neck, whispered her name, but she turned away, murmuring that she was tired. He didn't ask again. Adrian had learned long ago that silence was safer than confrontation. Still, as she drifted up beside him, he lay awake, breathing in her perfume, wondering who she was really wearing it for. And downstairs, in her phone's gallery was a hidden folder titled Cottage. Inside, Ethan's photos of her smiled back, free, barefoot, alive. The woman she wished she could be. Ethan wanted to give her a weekend without lies. "Just you and me," he'd said softly. "No titles, no guilt, no cameras, just peace." She hesitated for days before agreeing. And when Friday came, she left the mansion in a cream coat, telling the housekeeper she was visiting her sister. The drive to the coast felt like a rebellion she didn't know she had the courage for. The seaside cottage was small but warm, with old wooden floors and the sound of gulls outside. For 2 days, they lived like a forgotten couple from a different world. They cooked pasta together, danced barefoot to old songs, and talked about things that had nothing to do with money, about love, loss, and the fear of dying unseen. Ethan captured every moment with his camera, not to keep her, but to remember her. At night, she'd lie beside him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. So simple, so human. And yet, even as happiness brushed against her, guilt seeped in like cold air through cracks. She thought of Adrian, his patience, his long absences, his quiet ways of showing care. Was she betraying him, or had they already betrayed each other by forgetting how to love? On the third night, her phone buzzed. "I miss you. Lena, come home soon." The message shattered her. Tears flooded her eyes as she dropped the phone. Ethan took her hands, whispering, "You don't have to choose tonight." But she knew she did. Secrets are never quiet for long. London society had ears sharper than knives. One of Adrian's business assistants saw a reflection in a seaside cafe window, her laughter unmistakable. Another spotted her at an art exhibition, her hand brushing Ethan's arm. Soon, whispers turned into phone calls, and phone calls into rumors that fluttered through high-class dinners. Adrian heard them all but dismissed them at first. "My wife isn't that kind of woman," he said to a friend, his tone calm but clipped. Yet, something inside him trembled. He started to notice her differently now. Her distant eyes, her careful words, her new silence. When she smiled, it didn't reach her soul anymore. One evening, as they dressed for a charity event, he watched her from the doorway. "You've been different lately," he said quietly. "Is something wrong?" She turned to him, flawless in silver satin, and smiled the saddest smile he'd ever seen. "Nothing's wrong, Adrian. Maybe I'm just tired of being perfect." He wanted to press further, but didn't, because deep down, he feared the truth, that maybe his success had come at the price of her happiness. And maybe love had turned into something too fragile to touch. It came in an envelope, plain, unmarked, and waiting on his office desk. Adrian opened it absent-mindedly, expecting paperwork. But what slipped out made his breath vanish. A single photograph, Elena and Ethan at the seaside, sunlight spilling across their faces as she laughed. A laugh Adrian hadn't heard in years. He sat there for hours, staring at the image. No shouting, no breaking, just silence. His world didn't explode. It crumbled slowly, piece by piece, under the weight of betrayal. That evening, he returned home early. The mansion was quiet, the scent of roses heavy in the air. Elena appeared at the staircase, surprised to see him. "You're home early," she said softly. He showed her the photo without a word. Her face went pale, tears gathering before she even spoke. "Adrian, but her voice broke. "Do you love him?" he asked quietly, his voice void of anger, only sorrow. "No," she whispered, trembling. "I love you. I just forgot how to feel it." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening but cold. "Then you forgot us." And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own choices. The mansion became a graveyard of silence. For days, neither spoke. Adrian left early and came home late, and when he was there, his presence was like a shadow, visible but untouchable. Elena wandered the halls like a ghost, her reflection haunting every mirror. She deleted Ethan's number, burned the photographs, and yet the ache remained, like a scar that refused to fade. Reporters started sniffing around, their flashes waiting for a glimpse of the broken Moretti marriage. She stopped going out. The maids whispered softly, pitying her. Each night, she replayed the look in Adrian's eyes, the moment he stopped loving her, or maybe the moment he began to truly see her. Ethan called, begged to talk, to explain, but she never answered. Love built on stolen moments could never survive daylight. She understood that now. What she didn't know was that Adrian still kept the photograph, not as proof of betrayal, but as a reminder of what happens when love becomes a habit instead of a heartbeat. And so they lived beneath the same roof, but in different worlds, two strangers bound by vows and silence, until one of them broke first. Elena couldn't bear the silence anymore. She walked into Adrian's office one morning, trembling but determined. "I won't defend what I did," she said quietly. "I was lost, but it's no excuse. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." Adrian looked up slowly, his eyes distant. "You broke me, Elena," he said, "but maybe I broke you first." Her tears fell freely. "Then maybe we both forgot how to love." For a moment, neither spoke. Then, something softer passed between them. Not forgiveness yet, but the first breath of it. When Ethan came to see her one last time, it was raining. "I don't regret loving you," he said, voice trembling, "but you don't belong in my world." She nodded, crying. "You were the moment I remembered I was alive." He smiled sadly. "Then go live, Elena. Don't waste it." He kissed her forehead and walked away into the rain, leaving behind only silence and peace. For the first time, she didn't chase him. The mansion felt empty again, but this time it wasn't loneliness. It was reflection. Adrian still kept his distance, yet small gestures returned. Coffee waiting in the morning, quiet dinners, a book left on her nightstand. They didn't speak of love. They spoke of truth, of what broke and what might still be rebuilt. Healing didn't come with flowers or kisses. It came. One morning, she found a letter on her nightstand. Adrian's handwriting. "You hurt me, Elena, but I can't keep punishing you for reminding me that I failed you too. Let's start over, not as perfect people, but as real ones." She pressed the note to her heart and cried, not out of guilt, but relief. For the first time, forgiveness didn't feel like surrender. It felt like freedom. Months later, they renewed their vows privately by the Thames. No press, no diamonds, just them. She wore a simple dress. He wore a quiet smile. "You're my greatest mistake and my greatest miracle," Adrian whispered. She laughed softly through tears. "Then let's make better mistakes together." As the sun rose, they kissed, not to forget the past, but to prove they'd survived it. And in that gentle morning light, the billionaire's lonely wife finally found peace.